Hello and welcome to another TLDR Explains video on the constituencies and battles to look out for in tonight's election results. In this video, we're going to reduce the election down to a few key battles, and then pick a couple of seats in each battle to use as indicator seats. Also, at the end of this video, we're going to take a look at the big names who could end up losing their seats in this election. If you want to be kept up to date with the results on election night and have a bit of fun at the same time, we're doing a live stream through the night to explain the results and the exit poll information as it comes out. If that sounds like something you'd be into, click the link down below and then tap the button to be notified when we go live. Also, any patrons on silver tier or above can get access to a pre-show from 4:30. So if you sign up now, you can get access to that too. There's a link to that down below. Before we get into it, a tiny bit of context. A lot of the data we're going to use comes from YouGov's MRP polling, and you can find a link to that in the description. YouGov's MRP poll is the largest of all available polls, with a sample size of about 100,000, and it uses the MRP technique which correctly predicted a hung parliament in 2017, something which very few polls were able to do. If you want to know more about how it works, we did a full video on polling methods and MRP a while ago. So the YouGov poll we just mentioned predicts that the Conservatives will win 339 seats on Thursday, which equates to a majority, thanks to their 11-point lead in vote share over Labour. It's worth noting that while 339 seats is a lot, they're only beating Labour by 5% or less in 27 seats. So even a small national swing back to Labour could make all the difference. In fact, YouGov themselves has said that if the Conservatives' lead narrows to 7% nationally, then we're getting into hung parliament territory. Nonetheless, as things stand, and if polls are to be believed, the Conservatives are on track for a majority. This is because at the moment, they're performing well in these three key battlegrounds: protecting their Scottish seats from the SNP, winning Brexit voting Labour heartland seats in the Midlands, and keeping Remain voting seats in the South. Basically, they're winning the battle between the SNPs and the Conservatives in Scotland, the battle between Labour and the Conservatives in the Midlands, and the battle between the Lib Dems and the Conservatives in the South. When the election was first called, lots of political commentators were pessimistic about the Conservatives' chances of winning an election. They thought they'd lose their Scottish seats to the SNP, some southern seats to the Lib Dems, and didn't think they'd be able to win many of the traditionally Labour but Brexit voting seats in the Midlands. However, they seem to be doing all of those things. So let's take a look at these battlegrounds one by one. So the first one, the battle for Scotland. The Scottish Conservatives won 13 seats in 2017. However, Scotland voted 62% to remain, and the Conservatives have become more Brexity under Boris Johnson, which most people thought would spell the end for the Scottish Conservatives. They also weren't helped by the fact that Ruth Davidson, the well-liked leader of the Scottish Conservatives, quit the party, and Johnson isn't especially popular in Scotland. This is why a month ago the Conservatives were anticipating losing maybe 10 of their Scottish seats. So how come the YouGov polling only expects the Conservatives to lose 2 of their 13 seats? Well, it's largely because Labour are no longer considered a strictly unionist party. At the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, John MacDonald, Labour's Shadow Chancellor, said he'd let the Scots have a second independence referendum if the Scottish Parliament voted for one. And on top of that, voters have seemed to realise that Corbyn could only form a government with the help of the SNP, who, according to Nicola Sturgeon, would only agree to the coalition if he let them have a second independence referendum. This has allowed the Conservatives to corner the Scottish Unionist vote, largely at the expense of Labour. Nonetheless, it's still going to be close, and we've chosen 2 seats to watch: Gordon and Ochils and South Perthshire. They both look neck and neck at the moment. So if they go Conservative, we can expect the Conservatives to keep most of their Scottish seats, but if they go SNP, the Conservatives could be looking at an uphill struggle. We will of course also be keeping an eye on Lanark and Hamilton East, the constituency which was incredibly close in 2017, and that we visited to speak to the Labour candidate a couple of weeks ago. There's a link to the full interview in the description below. The second major battle is the Midlands, and it's between Labour and the Conservatives. Again, at the start of the election campaign, lots of political commentators didn't think that the Conservatives stood a chance. The Midlands are traditionally Labour, and while Brexity, a month ago the Brexit vote was being split between the Conservatives and the Brexit Party. In 2017, while Labour were more Remainery than the Conservatives, it seems like Labour Brexiteers decided to stick with Labour. So again, why does YouGov polling expect the Conservatives to pick up some 20 or so seats from Labour in these areas? Well, there's an obvious reason. The Brexit Party have been squeezed out by the Conservatives. Thanks to Johnson's new Brexit deal, the Conservatives have managed to bring back Brexiteer voters from the Brexit Party. And since Farage has decided to stand down in incumbent Conservative seats, the Brexit Party has been squeezed even further, to the point that they're currently polling at about 3% nationally. Interestingly, YouGov estimates that the Brexit Party's vote, even at a tiny 3% and 0 seats, is still going to cost the Conservatives 8 seats they would otherwise win by splitting the vote. Even though these seats have been traditionally Labour, YouGov seems to think that the Brexit divisions will override traditional party alliances, and that the Brexit voting Midlands might favour the Tories this time round. So, which are the seats to watch in this battle? Well, we've gone to Wrexham, which has been held by Labour for nearly 100 years. Almost 60% of its constituents voted for Brexit, and YouGov predicts a 4-point lead for the Conservatives. The other seat to watch is West Bromwich East, which has been Labour since its creation in 1974, with Tom Watson winning an 8,000 strong majority in 2017, but it's looking far closer this time round. If the Conservatives can overturn these seats, then chances are they'll be able to overwhelm the traditional Labour advantage in the Midlands. So the final battle is between the Lib Dems and the Conservatives in the south. You'll be expecting this, but at the start of the campaign, lots of political commentators thought that the Conservatives would be losing seats in these leafy Remain-leaning constituencies. They thought that the South would end up going towards the Liberal Democrats, especially because the Lib Dems are polling at about 20% nationally. The main reason that the Conservatives are more optimistic now is that the Lib Dems have suffered in the polls a bit, and are now at about 14%. This means that the Lib Dems are going to struggle in even the most Remainery seats. For example, the Lib Dems fielded Chuka Umunna, a relatively big name, in cities of Westminster and London, even though they've never won there before, and they made this decision simply because it voted 72% Remain. However, the YouGov poll only predict that only 28% of the constituency will vote for him, which is about the same as is projected for Labour, leaving the Conservatives to come through the middle with 40%. The seats to watch in this battle are Cheltenham and Kensington. Cheltenham is a two-horse race between the Lib Dems and the Conservatives, both polling at about 45%. Kensington is an interesting one. Labour won there last year by only about 20 votes, and the Lib Dems fielded Sam Gyimah, the ex-Conservative MP. According to YouGov polling, the Conservatives have an 8-point lead, but they're only on 37%, so a bit of tactical voting could make it interesting. Finally, there are a couple of big names who are at risk in this election. Dominic Raab, the Foreign Secretary and hardcore Brexiteer, is standing in Esther and Walton, which voted 58% to Remain. The YouGov poll gives him a comfortable 11-point lead over the Lib Dems, but more recent polling from Datapol gave him only a 5-point lead, despite his 23,000 vote majority in 2017. This means that even a little bit of tactical voting from Labour voters could be enough to unseat him. Dennis Skinner, the 87-year-old infamous Labour MP who's standing in Brexit-leaning Bolsover, is currently 4 points behind the Conservatives, so he could be on track to lose his seat. And Joe Swinson, the leader of the Lib Dems, is standing in East Dunbartonshire, with only a 5-point lead over the SNPs, according to the YouGov polling. It's also worth noting there's been a lot of conversation about unseating other major party leaders, especially Boris Johnson. There's been an ongoing Labour campaign to try and take the Prime Minister's seat. However, despite their efforts, YouGov's polling suggests that Johnson should be able to pretty comfortably hold on to his seat. Ultimately, the parties are targeting seats all over the country, including the following lists. The Conservatives are hoping to win Perth and North Perthshire, Kensington, Dudley South, Newcastle-under-Lyme, and Crewe and Nantwich. Labour want to see Southampton Itchen, Glasgow South West, Glasgow East, Arfon and Airdrie and Shotts all swing their way. The Lib Dems are hoping to gain Fife North East, Richmond Park, Kerringdon, St Ives and Sheffield Hallam. And finally, the SNPs are gunning for Stirling, Glasgow North East, Kirkcaldy and Cowdenbeath, Rutherglen and Hamilton West and Midlothian. If you've heard your constituency mentioned in this video, then you're incredibly lucky, as that means you live in a competitive constituency, and your vote could really matter. There's a whole bunch of places to keep an eye on, but the ones we've mentioned in this video are some of the best indicators of how the election will end up playing out. If you want to keep up to date with the results on election night, be sure to check out our live stream. We'll be there all the way through the night to cover the twists and turns, as well as having some fun along the way. Check out the link below and click the bell to be notified. You can also subscribe to our channel, and if you want to be notified every time we release a video, tap the bell icon too. And finally, if you want to see your name at the end of the videos just like these people, then sign up to our Patreon. There's a link to that down below.